New credit card regulations just went into effect for the over 180 million credit card holders in the U.S. Unfortunately, according to a recent survey, almost 75% admit to not reading the terms and conditions of their credit cards. So, here to explain what the new regulations mean to us is Karen Szulczewski, Communications Director with the Better Business Bureau of Northwest Florida. Karen, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, hopefully this is one of those things where change is good. People just need to understand how it affects them. When do these new credit card regulations actually go into effect?
The new Credit Card Reform Act was actually signed into law last May. There were a couple provisions that went into effect last August. The bulk of them actually just started February 22nd, and there's a few more that'll roll out throughout the year.
So what areas of the agreements, I know they're lengthy documents that we get, what are the key areas that are affected or part of this legislation?
The big thing for this legislation is that it's really increasing transparency. It's showing you more information about what your interest rate is. They have to give you more notice before they raise it. Additional details about your payment structure, how long it's going to take you to pay off your balance if you only make the minimum payments, how you can pay off the balance sooner if you wanted to make additional payments. So the big thing is just to try and help consumers be more educated about what their credit card statements are supposed to be.
Well, that's always good, and we appreciate what y'all do at the Better Business Bureau to educate people along these lines and the other things that you're involved with. Well, let's take a look at some of the new regulations specifically and some of the consumer protection. For example, notice of rate changes. You mentioned that. Tell us a little bit about how that in detail.
You know, unfortunately, the way it used to be is a lot of credit card companies would raise your rates and kind of tell you maybe a little bit after the fact or right before, so you didn't really have any time to take any action on it. Now, with very few exceptions, they have to provide you at least 45 days notice before they make any major changes to your account, and that includes raising your interest rates.
Well, what about, say for example, I want to get rid of the card. I'm not happy with that.
Maybe you don't like those interest rates. Maybe you don't want to agree to it. You have 45 days notice to take action, and if you choose not to accept those terms, you can cancel the card, and they have to allow you to do that. The other provision in that is they have to give you time to pay it off. They can't just say, oh, well, if you're going to cancel your card with us, well, we want everything paid back. For the most part, they have to give you 5 years to pay off that balance. They can't just make a demand that you pay everything back immediately just because they don't like that you're canceling your card.
Now, is that paid back at the old interest rate or at the proposed interest rate?
That will be at whatever the interest rate was. Again, if they're going to raise the rates, they have to give you 45 days notice, and that can't be applied retroactively. That has to apply to new balances going forward. So if you don't like that interest rate and you're closing the card, you're not adding any additional principal to the card, then everything else is going to be at your old interest rate. So
the card holder can just opt out of the agreement, pay off the remaining balance over 5 years at the old interest rate.
That's correct. That way it's not a penalty if you want to cancel the card. You're not being punished if you choose not to accept their new terms.
Okay. What about monthly statements? I know I'll get some that it's almost, I have to get it in the mail the minute I get it. I think this is addressed in this new thing about how often or how frequently they're mailed. Tell us a little bit more about that.
You know, and this was something I noticed too, that it seemed like I was getting my statements closer and closer to the due date. And so a lot of times consumers were saying, I just got my bill, I turn around and mail the check and it's already past due. And so this is to try to address that. They have to give you at least 21 days from the time you receive that statement before your due date. They can't have floating due dates anymore. So it used to be that it was due, you know, sometime between like the 20th and the 27th of the month, and it would kind of change from month to month. No, you have to have the same date every month. And they used to also do some things where they had really weird times for the deadline. So it was due by noon or it was due by 8 a.m. that day. If it's due on that date, it has to be due by 5 p.m. So that again gives you some more transparency, lets you know exactly when your due date's going to be every month, lets you know what time it's due, and gives you time to actually get that statement and make that payment so that again you're not being penalized because they mailed it right before the due date.
Well, it helps people to plan ahead and budget if they know exactly what date that's going to be.
Absolutely.
And so that is good news. What about overpayments? A lot of people may not be thinking about, well, I just want to pay more, but a lot of people may opt to do this. Tell us about how that is done and where those payments are applied?
Well, historically, credit card industry, when you made an additional payment, they would have put it towards the balance with the lowest interest rate. Now this new regulation says that it has to go towards the balance with the highest interest rate, and that will help you as a consumer as you're trying to pay down your debt. So this is a really good provision for consumers.
Well, what about over the limit?
This was another place where the credit card companies were really getting consumers. They would allow you to keep charging. They'd keep accepting your card, and you may not realize that you're over the limit until you get your statement at the end of the month and you see all these over the limit fees. This says now that the consumer has to choose to have that option. So if you go to a retailer and you want to make a charge, if you are over your limit, your credit card is going to be declined unless you have specifically told the credit card company in writing that you want them to allow you to exceed your limit and that you're willing to pay that over the limit fee. And so that way, again, you're not caught by surprise by, you're not aware that you've gone over your limit. Again, it's going back to adding more transparency in the credit card operations.
Well, if someone has an existing card, how do they inform that credit card company that they want to participate in this or they do not?
That should be in your terms and conditions from your credit card company, and unfortunately you're going to have to read the fine print to see how you can let them know that you do want to opt in to be allowed to go over your limit and that you're willing to pay that fee.
And I guess when somebody's getting a new credit card, that would be part of setting up the account.
Absolutely.
Okay, well that's good to know. What about minimum payments and the increased disclosure? You mentioned they'll let you know how long it's going to take, and that can be really scary.
It's really scary, but it's something that consumers need to know. When you're only making the minimum payment, sometimes you may not even be paying off the interest that you've accrued for that month. And so the new disclosure, again, additional transparency. They have to tell you if you make your minimum payment every month, how long is it going to take you to pay off that balance even if you add nothing to it? And how much is it going to end up costing you? That $1,000 credit card charge, how much is that going to cost you by the time you've paid everything off making the minimum payment? The other thing that they have to disclose now in the statement is how much you have to pay each month. If you wanted to pay off that entire balance in 36 months, what would your monthly payment be in order to get to that point? So again, it's helping consumers because a lot of people have no clue what they're paying in interest. Most of them couldn't tell you the interest rate that they're paying on their cards right now. They have no idea what that's going to mean for them long term, what their total amount that they're going to end up paying on that. And so this just helps them to make educated decisions whenever they're trying to figure out their budget, figure out what to charge, and how they can pay that off.
Well, it can be a wake-up call, too. Someone from the United Way was here recently talking about financial literacy, and that really is a wake-up call to see, wow, this is really costing me much more than that one item or two or three items, whatever the case may be. What about double billing cycles?
This is another way that the credit card companies use to kind of get the consumer. You may make a big purchase on your credit card, and it's smart to do that for big purchases, electronics, appliances, furniture, something like that, but then you pay it off at the end of the month. Well, you're not paying any interest on that balance. So what the credit card companies were doing, some of them were actually looking at your overall balance for the last 2 months and calculating your interest and your payments that way. We've already paid that off, so you're paying interest on something that you don't owe anymore, and so this eliminates that so that you're only paying interest on that 1 month.
That's great information. Where can somebody go if they want to read more about this in detail?
We have a lot more information on our website, bbb.org. The Federal Reserve also has some information on the new protections, federalreserve.gov.
Well, Karen, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.